Many thanks indeed for staying with us. At least 4 people have died and hundreds of protesters and police officers are injured in a violence in Haldwani, a northern Indian state. Now, violence broke out on Thursday evening when police were conducting what they call an anti-encroachment drive on an allegedly illegally constructed mosque and religious school on high court orders. But the faithful who pray there are accusing the authorities of demolishing the structures before the court could give a final decision in the case. The state has cut internet services, imposed a curfew, and issued shoot-at-sight orders to bring the situation under control. Muslim groups say they feel unfairly targeted under Prime Minister Narendra Modi's Hindu nationalist government and accuses of religious polarization ahead of the elections in 2 months. A young girl has been pulled out alive from a deadly landslide in a miraculous rescue in southern Philippines. At least 11 people were killed in the landslide, which was triggered by intense rainfall. Over 110 others have been reported missing for days. According to officials, more than 1,100 families have been sent to evacuation centers. Families of the missing endured an agonizing wait for the search to restart after efforts were paused on Thursday due to limited visibility and intermittent slides. Authorities in the region say the girl is in stable condition, adding that her rescue had provided a sign of hope. It's yet more victory for former President Donald Trump, who has won the Nevada Republican caucus by a large margin. Initial results showed the former U.S. president gaining over 99% of the vote in a contest that didn't include former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley, his last remaining major rival in the race. Addressing a victory in party, Mr. Trump said, open quote, "If we win this state, we easily win the elections in November." He has now won contests in 3 states, Nevada, Iowa, and New Hampshire, making him the likely Republican candidate in November's election. Let's cross over now to Pakistan, where votes are being counted after Thursday's general elections, which was marred by the suspension of mobile phone services and violent unrest. 3 people have been confirmed dead and 6 others injured in clashes with police in the Shangla district. Official results from the Electoral Commission show independents backed by Imran Khan's Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf (PTI) have won at least 49 seats. The PTI's results are against 42 for the Pakistan Muslim League, Nazwas, and 34 for the Pakistan People's Party, PPP. Iran's ambassador to Pakistan, Raza Amiri Moghadam, has congratulated the government on safe and secure elections, but analysts in the country say this is the nation's least credible elections and results have been slowed to come out compared to previous polls. And back here in the continent, Zimbabwe's cabinet has passed legislation abolishing the death penalty for murder offences, which was inherited from British colonial rule. The cabinet this week approved the memorandum of the private member's death penalty abolition bill introduced to Parliament last year. In an official statement, the Zimbabwean cabinet stressed the need to maintain a fair and balanced penal system where intensifying circumstances can result in life sentences. The Zimbabwe Constitution currently authorizes judges to impose death penalty on male murder convicts between the ages of 21 and 70. According to government records, 62 inmates are presently on death row. Official figures show that Zimbabwe has executed 79 people since achieving internationally recognized independence from Britain in 1980. The last execution in Zimbabwe was in 2005, marking a decade and a half since the country renounced this controversial practice. Zimbabwean President Emmerson Mnangagwa, a former death row inmate during the struggle for independence from British rule, played a central role in this historic decision. Well, let's bring in Zimbabwean journalist Lea Lawrence, who joins us live on the program from Mutare. Lawrence, just how are residents receiving this historic decision?
Well, thank you so much for having me. Well, the move to have the death penalty removed has been met with mixed feelings, where we have the majority being the abolitionist, those that are in favor of having the law removed, arguing to say Zimbabwe has taken the right step towards ending what they call an aberrant and inhuman form of punishment, which they say has no place in the world. So the Zimbabwean cabinet has been commended for approving the bill to abolish the law in Zimbabwe, a law that has been largely described as dehumanizing, with the traits like its traits are traceable in colonial history, where it was used as a tool to curb divergence, mainly among freedom fighters. Well, various non-government organizations have denounced the law with the likes of Amnesty International leading advocacy, saying it infringes on people's right to life as proclaimed in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Some legal practitioners have echoed same sentiments to say the law is a violation to the right to life, adding that it does not. It is not deterrent enough to contribute towards a safer and more secure societies. So, majority of members of the public, organizations, legal practitioners, and also government officials are in support of having the law removed permanently. So, by and large, the reaction has been largely positive, except for a few retentionists. Section 48 of Zimbabwe's constitution indicates that the death penalty may be imposed only for murder committed in aggravating circumstances and only on men aged between 21 and 70 years, and not women. So the Constitution does not say that the law must provide for the death penalty, and does not say that people convicted of aggravated murder must be sentenced to death. It leaves it to Parliament to decide whether or not a law should provide for the death penalty. So right now, much pressure is exerted on parliamentarians to permanently vote the law out.
And Lawrence, what exactly are the options for inmates on death row? Are we looking at a lengthy jail term for them?
Currently, approximately 63 people countrywide are on death row, and chances are they may benefit from the abolition in the event that the bill passes. However, their benefit will be transitioned from a death sentence to probably life imprisonment. So, as he was announcing the government's stance to support the abolition of the law, Information Minister Jennifer Musweri in a statement said, in view of the need to retain the deterrent element in sentencing murderers, it is expected that the new law will impose lengthy sentences without violating the right to life. So he further says, in light of murder cases involving aggravating circumstances, convicts could face life sentence. So this is a clear indication of the alternative in which government intends to take in the advent of a new law.
So allow me to squeeze in just one final question, Lawrence, because we know that President Mnangagwa has been an advocate for the abolition of capital punishment. So far, we understand about 29 African countries have abolished the death penalty. Many wonder if perhaps more countries in the region will perhaps follow suit.
Well, the sub-Saharan Africa region made remarkable progress against the death penalty in 2022. The number of executing countries and the death sentences recorded during the year substantially declined. While two countries abolished the death penalty for all crimes, and another two abolished it for ordinary crimes. So, to be particular, Sierra Leone and the Central African Republic abolished the death penalty for all countries, for all crimes, while Equatorial Guinea and Zambia abolished the penalty for ordinary crimes only. So, clearly, this is an indication of a positive movement in the direction of abolition, and likely more countries are still using the law in the region may follow suit. I think Ghana is in the process, or was in the process also, of abolishing this law.
Well, Lea Lawrence, thank you indeed for speaking with us. Zimbabwean journalist Lea Lawrence at Mutare in Zimbabwe. All right, so there you go. Away from Zimbabwe, at least 13 Sudanese migrants have died off the coast of Tunisia after the small metal boat sank. And according to local authorities, 27 others are believed to be missing as they sought to cross the Mediterranean Sea to reach Europe. The Tunisian Coast Guard says it was able to rescue just 2 people from the capsized boat 14 kilometers off the coast of the port of Cheba and is searching for those missing. According to survivors, a total of 42 people were aboard, all from Sudan. They say the group had left from the coast of nearby Sifax, a common jumping-off point for illegal boat journeys across the Mediterranean Sea to Italy. Such migration attempts have increased in recent times from Tunisia by both Tunisians and people from elsewhere in the continent. This is The World Today. We're due for another break, but just ahead, in an effort to boost tourism, Malawi lifts visa restrictions for 79 countries. We have details in just a moment. Please stay with us. You're welcome back. Germany is the latest country to experiment with a 4-day work week. That's thanks largely to an organization called 4-Day Week Global, which says that a shorter work week can have huge benefits for both businesses and their employees. The new model is being piloted all around the world, from the UK to Portugal, Australia, South Africa, and Nigeria. Well, let's dissect this move with DW correspondent Emily Leshner, who is live for us in Berlin. Emily, walk us through just how the 4-day week model is supposed to work.
Well, it can vary depending on where it's applied, but essentially the premise is that employees go to work 4 days a week instead of the traditional 5 without any changes to their salary. So if you normally work 40 hours a week, now you work 32 hours a week for the same pay. And central to this concept is that the extra weekend day gives people time to engage in hobbies, exercise, or tasks that fall under house or life administration. It provides them with a better work-life balance, which makes people happier or less stressed, depending on how you look at it. And this, in turn, also has massive benefits for employers. And there seem to be some very real, clear benefits, and that's why more and more places are willing to see if it works for them, usually doing a 6-month pilot first and then analyzing the findings to determine if it's beneficial enough to apply permanently.
And Emily, can I ask you, what kind of conversations are perhaps ongoing between companies and their employees about this?
Well, that's what's really interesting about this. It seems pretty clear from the data at this point that it is, by and large, very good for companies and their bottom line. Despite one less working day, companies are reporting increased productivity and fewer sick days. A shorter week has also led to fewer and shorter meetings, something I think many people can probably appreciate, and it's led to higher staff morale. In the UK, 90% of the businesses that participated in a trial last year said they were going to stick to the model for now. And pilot programs in South Africa and Nigeria have also been well received. The model there has been adapted to address local needs. So in South Africa, employees can choose which day they want to have off rather than getting Friday off, as we've seen in other countries. This is because South Africa has limited public transportation and an unstable power grid. And also many people have other part-time jobs. So giving employees the choice of which day to take off makes more sense there. And in Nigeria, in the states of Edo and Kwara, actually they reduced the work week to 3 days a week for state employees. And this is intended to help people deal with high petrol prices, especially after the federal government decided to do away with fuel subsidies. And government officials in Nigeria also said that one of the reasons for experimenting with a shorter work week was so that people had more time for agriculture-based responsibilities responsibilities. And energy savings is another key benefit of a shorter work week, not only in Nigeria and South Africa, but in Germany as well. And I want to stay with Germany for a moment because Germany is experiencing a major labor shortage, and the 4-day work week is being seen as something that might be able to help alleviate the situation by attracting people to come and work for German businesses. Data from previous trials have shown that the 4-day work week has led to better employee retention and has been a key driver of recruitment. A 4-day work week offered by a smaller business, for example, who might not be able to compete with bigger companies when it comes to salary, it makes them more attractive.
Emily, talk us through the motivation behind this idea to change the traditional work week.
Well, one of the key drivers was COVID. All of a sudden, companies had to let go of this idea of the traditional work setup. So working from the office 5 days a week, employees were proving that they could work from home and still get things done. And the advocacy organization behind this big push, 4-day week global, it was started in 2019, so before the pandemic. But we really start to see the idea take off after the pandemic, because now we have something that starts to chip away at this long-held belief, this unshakable belief about what kind of structure employees need to be productive. And of course, not all workplaces can adopt this model. So schools, healthcare facilities, news organizations like the ones you and I work for example, but many of them can. And when it benefits both companies and employees, it seems more and more like a no-brainer.
Well, it's a fine place to leave it. We'll see how this gets to work out. DW correspondent Emily Lechner live for us in Berlin. And now the United Nations is urging countries not to forget millions of people caught up in the conflict in Sudan as it calls for a $4.1 billion to help stave off famine fears and assist those who fled abroad to bordering states. Now, according to UN agencies, the 10-month war has created one of the world's largest displacement and protection crises. Martin Griffiths, the UN's emergency relief chief and the head of the UN Aid Coordination Office, says half of Sudan's population, 25 million people, need humanitarian assistance.
The population of Sudan needs humanitarian assistance, 25 million people, far too many of them children. 18 million people are, quote-unquote, acutely food insecure. If we start seeing famine in Sudan, and it won't be the first time we've seen famine in Sudan, to add to this violence and displacement and lack of access and lack of a political horizon, then I think we can all agree we have no humanity in us that will allow this to happen.
We are already seeing people fleeing Sudan, especially along certain routes from East Sudan and from Chad itself, where there's many of them, towards Libya, Tunisia, and then towards Europe. So I have warned, literally, European countries in particular, that if the current neglect of this crisis continues, we will see secondary movements. When you ask people, would you go back if there was a ceasefire, they think carefully about the answer and said, we would have to be convinced that there is real peace and that that the militia is not going to come into our house and kick us out again. So the message that I passed to the leadership and will continue to pass to the two leaderships is really, you're losing your own people. What's the purpose of fighting if then you don't have people to rule?
And to other stories now. South Africa's manufacturing production disappointed in December. That's according to a report published by Pretoria-based statistics. South Africa on Thursday output increased by 0.7% compared to a year earlier, down from an upwardly revised 2.5% in November. Month-on-month production contracted by 1.7%, both figures falling short of analysts' expectations. Our South Africa correspondent Innocent Simosa with the details.
According to Stats SA, the manufacturing sector in South Africa contributes around 12.27% to the country's gross domestic product. South Africa's December production contrasts by 1.7%. Deputy Minister of Public Enterprises, Obert Babela, attributes this to inadequate logistic infrastructure.
We should have connected Africa on rail, and then the air also are not as connected. Some of the people who are producing flowers in South Africa, after plantation season harvesting, they take the flowers to the market. And when they go into cargo, the cargo takes them to Netherlands or to France, and then from France back to Africa. It's very expensive. But also we don't build ships that we can apply to the maritime to say, these routes now we need as African continent, apply for them so that a ship can move from one coast to the other, delivering goods that connects to our continent. So for domestic, we have to get our sugar plantation, sugar canes from Brazil. The ship does not come across Atlantic. It must go to Holland, dock there, and then another one come, because they say there's no international route between Brazil and South Africa or Africa. And yet we are just opposite each other.
Given these challenges, can South Africa effectively attract investors? Managing Director at Repetition First, Tshepo Matseba, explains.
Look, investors want predictability, so they want to know that an environment that you go in to invest is predictable, in the sense that you know that the energy supply is stable, you know that the country is relatively stable in terms of infrastructure, that the financial system and the banking system are functional and not compromised, and that there's leadership stability. And so I think the investors are looking for that kind of indication that there'll be leadership stability. And can South Africa attract investors? We certainly can. And if you look at the fact that the Americans, for example, are a bit uncomfortable with South Africa's taking Israel to The Hague, the Americans are not in a position to actually literally just disinvest in South Africa. Companies such as Ford are invested in South Africa, and that investment will continue to grow.
That are now in development.
Delivering his State of the Nation address, President Cyril Ramaphosa said the momentum towards Transnet reform will increase this year. From Johannesburg, South Africa, Innocent Simosa, Channels Television News.
And finally, data privacy is a fundamental human right that affects every citizen, and so safeguarding it from theft and abuse is everyone's responsibility. And that's what the Data and Knowledge Information Privacy Protection Initiative is advocating. At its 9th Data Privacy Lecture, they focus on the theme, Shaping Tomorrow's Privacy Landscape.
So their prayer, so it will be.
With the increase in digitization of our lives, concerns about the security of personal information have taken center stage. And in a bid to shed light on the matter, the Data and Knowledge Information Privacy Protection Initiative hosts a summit to not only address pressing issues around data security, but to also share best practices to mitigate risks.
As we navigate a world increasingly intertwined with technology, our personal information is a valuable commodity. From online transaction to social media interaction, our digital footprint is vast and potentially vulnerable. This day prompts us to discuss and assess our privacy status, stay informed about data breaches, and demand responsible data practices from the entities that handle our information.
Speaking virtually at the event, the National Commissioner of the Nigeria Data Protection Commission, Dr. Vincent Olatunji, shares how far Nigeria has come in the data protection journey.
So what we are doing here today is very relevant. More with the theme, shaping tomorrow's privacy landscape. How do we really shape tomorrow's landscape in the area of data privacy in Nigeria? We have actually started the journey in Nigeria with the law that we have. And the model, which is very unique to us, of enforcing the law, of implementing whatever policies that we have to drive this ecosystem. Now we have the law, we have the commission. The job ahead, the money to the commission, we cannot do it alone. We need to work with stakeholders to ensure that we achieve a robust data protection ecosystem in Nigeria.
With the ever-growing volumes of personal information individuals entrust with various entities, including social media platforms and financial institutions, one key aspect of data privacy is protection and ensuring that information remains confidential and not misused. The guest speaker at the event emphasizes the rights individuals have as data subjects.
As a data subject, you have a right to access your information. You have a right to rectification. You have a right to object to the processing of your data. You have a right to restrict the way it's being processed. You have a right to data portability. You also have a right for it to be forgotten and deleted from their system. And that's why we are here. Number one, to create awareness, to let you know you have a right to the privacy of your data. Number two, to also let you know that these people who have your data, they are under control, and that there are consequences for their actions, and that there's a legal framework that has been put together to be able to hold them accountable, whereby we can enforce certain laws controlling their actions. One of the things that we should drive towards as a nation going forward is to ensure data harmonization. And data harmonization will ensure it creates the opportunity for us to be able to have one database.
As our society continues to navigate the digital landscape, events like this play a crucial role in shaping the future of data privacy and ensuring that individuals and organizations are well equipped to face the challenges ahead.
And just before we go, Malawi has removed visa restrictions for travelers from 79 countries in an effort to boost tourism and trade in the country. The countries include the UK, China, Russia, Germany, Australia, Canada, Ghana, the Gambia, Sierra Leone, and others. The changes also include exemptions for certain groups such as diplomats and government officials, as well as countries that have mutual exchange agreements for multiple entry visas with Malawi. According to the new visa regulations, the validity of multiple entry visas in Malawi is now up to 12 months. And that does it for us here on the show for today and indeed the week. On behalf of everybody here, thanks for watching. I am Kelly Egiga.